Okay, so we're going to get started. So my name's Andrew Heino. I work in CITS and instructional development. And my colleague Rachel Rubello is also here. She's in the chat. I'll mention, as you see on the screen here, we recommend down along the bottom of the page, there is a button to open up a chat. So if you click on that, it opens up a little window along the side and you can type in questions and Rachel will answer you in that text chat while we're talking. As Rachel mentioned earlier, your microphones are muted and locked off, so you won't be able to type. You won't be able to speak during the session, but at the end we can open it up a little bit if anybody has questions. But otherwise, during the session and throughout it, you can just type your questions down in the chat, and Rachel will get back to you as we're going. All right, so this is part 2 of our workshop. If any of you were in one of the part 1 workshops 2 weeks ago now, we went over some basics about my courses and how to get up and running with Zoom. So we're kind of picking up from there using some of that knowledge, building on some of that knowledge we started with. So the first thing we're going to do is take a look at some stuff in my courses. And then after we look at some stuff there, we're going to move on and talk about using Zoom and Kaltura for delivering sort of lecture and information to your students, as well as meeting with them online. All right, so to get started, and I'll just sort of reiterate, as you ask questions in the chat, Rachel will answer them. So even if you don't hear it from me, Rachel's answering that question in the chat with you. So in my courses, the first thing we're going to talk about is using items. So this may be sort of review for some folks, but as you build your areas and add stuff to pages, the best way to add context to the students as to what they're looking at and what to do with it is to add little headers at the top of each page with some sort of straightforward information for them. So as you'll see here on my screen, I have this sample of what a week might look like in my courses, and up at the top there's what's called an item. And so this item says, welcome to week 1, refer to the list below, and I have a list for students, a to-do list. These are really helpful as you organize your online units to have these at the top of each page for students to be able to read and sort of gauge what they need to do with the rest of the stuff on the page. So in an example here, if I wanted to add that on this page, I'd go to Build Content and then choose the first option, Item. And I'll just call this my overview for week 8. And then in the box here, I'm just going to type what I want them to see. Welcome to week 8. This week, we are going to discuss, and then I'll use my little weekly to-do list. And there's a little numbered list here, so I'm just going to use it just like in Word or anywhere else. And I'll say, read chapter X, submit the homework, take the quiz. So most of you are used to doing this type of stuff in your syllabus. And you might say, why do I have to do this here? It's already in my syllabus. But with online courses, because everything's so driven by electronic organization and they're always online, give them the information when they need it, where they need it. So here, if you're looking at week 8, instead of having to go to the syllabus and look up what I need to do with all this stuff on this page, just come in here and make your item. And then when you submit it, it'll drop it on the page and you have that information right at the point they need it, as opposed to in sort of a separate place from where the actual content and things live. So using items to add overviews is a great way to just give your stuff some context and sort of put your opening touch on the content that you're organizing into your site. So yeah, it's a great way to do that. So next, let's talk about some assessments you can do in my courses. So in part 1, we went into how to make assignments, which are just the basics of having your students submit a document to you for grading privately. But we're going to talk about 2 others now. One is discussion boards. So you may have heard of them. Some of you might have used them, but basically they are a way to put up a topic or a subject for discussion. And then students can all go in and post their responses. And you, as the instructor, can see everything they've done and grade it. But then other students in the class can also see what these students have posted, and they can reply to each other. So they can go back and forth and respond to one another. So to set up a discussion board in my courses, along the top of a content area, like this one, you go to the Tools button and choose Discussion Board. And then I'm going to click Create New Forum, and I'm going to start filling out information about it. So just as an example, I'm going to call this week 8 discussion. And then there's a whole lot of options for setting up a discussion board, but just sort of out of the box, how it's normally set up is for what I described, where students can come in, make their post, read what each other have posted, and reply to each other. But there's a few other options you can sort of use to guide how you want them to participate in the discussion. And so first up is a popular option here to make students make one post before they're able to see what other people have posted. So if I choose participants must create a thread here, it's going to make it so that students can't see what other people have posted until they make their first post. So it makes their stuff a little bit more original. They can't read what other people have posted and then sort of go off of that. Instead of reading the stuff you've posted or watching the videos, they have to make their first original post before they can participate in the rest of the discussion. Underneath that, there's grade discussion forum. So if you want this to be graded, the activity itself, to grade students' posts and replies to each other, here you just need to make sure you choose grade discussion forum and type in how many points you want to grade it out of. This is the only assessment type of thing in my courses that doesn't automatically set itself up for grading. So when you do create it, make sure you choose to create a graded discussion forum if you want that turned on, and then to set that setting. Just like an assignment, you can set a due date so that students see when something's due. So I'll just put that for later this week. And a little further down, honestly, I'm not going to get into these settings because, like I've said, by default, they can do just about everything you want to have them do in an online discussion. So I'm just going to click Submit, and then I'm going to click Next. Now on this third page here, I'm going to put the directions for the discussion. I'm going to say post, so watch this video and post your thoughts, reply to at least 2 others. So this is really unoriginal the directions here. But think about when you're making a discussion for students to do, avoid yes or no answers and do as much as you can to make whatever their response that you're eliciting be something somewhat personalized. What's your take on something? What's your perspective on it? Ideally, there's a lot of answers based on where students are coming from. It's not just an analysis of the text where they could all kind of come to the same conclusion, or the conclusion is going to be universally pretty much the same. Similar, you could use this for like a debate. You could say, you know, half of you take one stance, half of you take another stance, regardless of your personal sort of standing. Some people use it to role play, and ahead of the discussion, you can say, you know, if your last name starts with A through G, you're, you know, this group of people. If your last name's H through whatever, you're this group of people. Do whatever you can to mix it up and avoid just like read or watch this and then tell me what you think. Just because that will get monotonous and students will start to sort of all bleed together. Do whatever you can to sort of put them in a scenario and have them work within those confines and in that structure. So I'm going to click Submit here, and it's going to add this discussion to the page. Here it is. So when I click on the week 8 discussion, this is how it works. Students come in. They're going to see a button at the top to create a thread. So they'll do that. They'll say Andrew's post. I'm going to say, here is my post. So they type in their response there. They also have a box if they need to attach something. Students sometimes will try to attach what they want to type as the discussion post instead of putting it in this box. It's good that they put it in this box so it's easy to read and students don't have to open attachments. But if there is, you know, sometimes people use a discussion as well for peer review. So they might like attach a paper for other people to see. So that's where that can come in handy. But I'll just say discussion post, here it is, submit. And this is just what you and the students will see. You'll come in here, all this comes in, you'll see a post. You as the, you know, students can click on it, read what the person has posted, click reply. I can say something back, hi there, submit. And then it puts it right underneath there as a response to that original person. And that's how these discussions work. They're called threaded discussions, where one person makes an original post, other people click into there and they make replies to it. And so if somebody else posted, their name would be here, and you know the whole class would file in. Everything's time-stamped and attached to folks' names, and that all just sort of filters in and sort of almost works like an inbox, but it's all sort of class-wide, where they can all talk amongst each other. So that's it for discussions. That they're pretty straightforward, and you just kind of set them up, and then they, come in and fill in the information. You grade it on the other end. I'll mention too, I'm recording this whole workshop, and I will send out a link to it afterwards so that everyone can watch back what we talked about. But also I'll include some links to tutorials that explain how to do everything we talked about here. I'm not going to go by every single click and show you every single thing of how to do everything in my courses because there's just too many buttons. But the tutorials go into the nitty-gritty more of how to click by click set up the things that I'm talking about. Really what we're trying to do here is give you some ideas and strategies that you can follow through on. So I would recommend that if you're taking notes, write down, oh, I need to learn how to set up a discussion. I need to learn how to do this in Zoom. And then if the tutorials we send don't get you what you need, you can always follow up with us and we'll help you out with it. And then as I'm talking too, in the chat, Rachel is pasting in some tutorials to do the things that I'm talking about. So they're coming at you in a lot of different ways, but don't feel bad if I passed through it and you didn't fully get what I was doing. We will follow up and we can always help you through. All right, so that's discussions. I mentioned one other good use for a discussion board, not only for class topical discussions, but it can be good to also have a discussion board dedicated to just general questions and answers. That's off specific topic, but it's just a place that can help cut down on your email inbox of students who have questions, where you can say, here's a general discussion forum I'm going to set up where you can go and just post any questions you have about the class. Students can reply to each other if they know the answers, and you can reply to everyone. And the benefit, especially in an online course, of having a general question and answer forum is that students, it's less likely that they're going to ask the same question multiple times, because when you answer someone, the rule of thumb is usually one person asks the questions, at least two other people have the same question and didn't ask it. If they just go to that forum, they'll see someone has asked it and they'll see your response to it. So it's just sort of a nice log too of everything everyone has already been answered without having it all hidden in email where only you and the person who asked the question can ask it. This sort of cuts out any of that non-grade related stuff that's just, what do you mean by this? What are the directions for that? It's an easy way to do that. Let's have a general forum for that. Okay, we got a lot of questions during the last workshop, part 1, and sort of since then too, about tests and what can the test tool in my courses do. So the test tool in my courses has a whole lot of buttons. We're going to go through some of the highlights here to give you an idea of what it's capable of. But in general, it's a tool where you can set up a series of questions, just like you might on like a paper, quiz, or test, that most of which can be automatically graded. So if you think about like multiple choice, true or false, matching questions where you can say, this is the correct answer, it'll take care of the grading for you. So let's take a look at that. So first I'm going to show you what it looks like to students. So I set up this test before the workshop. I'm going to come in here and begin it. And this is what's called a 1-at-a-time test, where students take the questions one at a time. So this is a true or false question where the students just answer true or false. So I'm going to hit that. This is a space. I'm going to hit true, go to the next question. You can kind of get an idea for how the test tool works and flows for students just by seeing this. So we can see, the questions show up along the bottom. They can see what question they're on. I'm going to say, I made the questions too hard for myself. I'm just going to give some answers here. This is what's called an ordering question. And the ordering question is another automatically gradable thing where you can put a list of terms or steps or something, and then tell the students they have to put it in whatever order that it goes in. So this is the mathematical order of operations. I don't know why that was the first thing that came to my mind. I don't think I've used that since like high school. But so I'm going to say that, the PEMDAS of it all. So parentheses, exponents. So the students here can put in, this goes first, this goes second, this goes third, fourth, and then fifth, and then sixth. So it's just a way to sort of shake up, just instead of straight multiple choice all the time and true or false, this is a matching question, which can kind of make things a little bit different. Moving on from matching, here is a fill in the blank. So this is just a way to put a question out there, and then it would be a 1 or 2 word response that you want the students to type in. And then you can pre-fill the match on the other end, where you can say the correct answer is Dartmouth. So the students come in and, if it recognizes that they typed in Dartmouth, it gives them the points. Otherwise it wouldn't. So this is a oh, I'm sorry, this is a matching question. The one I showed you before with the PEMDAS, that was an ordering question. I might have mixed up my words there. So this is a matching question where the students match something on the right with something on the left. So this is what animal, match up the animal with the sound. So you can see here, they get to choose the letter based on the list on the right side. So I can just match these up here. I think I set this up wrong where they are all just A, B, C, D. I'm sure students would be thrilled to have more tests like this, but as you set things up, you can randomize it so that stuff doesn't show up like this. I'm taking it as an instructor, so it's a little overly easy for me. I'm not in here as a student, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like and how it looks and how it works. So that's a matching question. And then last up is your basic multiple choice. You can not only set them up to do multiple choice, you can also do multiple answers, where you can say, choose all that apply. So this is a single response, multiple choice, but multiple answer is also an option if you wanted them to be able to choose multiples. All right, I'm going to save that. Submit it. Again, I'm sort of faking it as a student here. And then as the student, you can, or as the instructor, I should say, you can control what students are able to see after they take a test. So this one's set up to be pretty liberal, where the students can see the questions, what the answers were, what the correct answers were, what answers they gave, but you can lock this down pretty hardcore if you want to. A lot of disciplines will have the students, especially for midterms and stuff, not so much for like quizzes, we'll set it up so that after they take a test or a quiz, they see nothing. They can't see the questions they answered, they can't see what they got right or wrong, and they cannot see the points that they earned. So a lot like, for example, our nursing faculty, they like them to just take the test, and then the nurses go in, they check what the item analysis was. Item analysis kind of like a fancy sort of detailed analysis of how they answered and how strong the questions were. And then you can sort of change answers, accept additional answers, and then release the information to the students afterward. And it also can be good for test security, where you can say, no one can see any of the, what they did or got right or wrong or grades until after everyone's taken the test, for example. So there's some security options with tests that are really good. If I come in, I'm going to talk a little bit more about test options without getting into too much depth. So here, you can choose to have students take it more than once. So if this is like a pre-test or a self-test or something, and you just want to make sure that they can do it and do it well, you can open it up for multiple attempts, where you can say either they can take it unlimited times or they can take it a certain amount of times. So I set this into unlimited, where they can take it as many times as they want to. But that's a good option to know you have. The timer is a good thing to turn on, especially for quizzes and graded exams, where you can say the students have X amount of minutes, and then it auto submits after that time has been met. Where if a student comes in here and starts a test at 1 o'clock, and you've set the timer to 60 minutes, even if they leave the test or come on, lose the page or something, the timer is always ticking from the moment that they start, so they'll never have more than the 60 minutes they were given. But if they get kicked out, they can go back in and keep going. They may lose a minute or two, but the timer makes sure that they don't have more time than what you want them to have. For anybody who's had a student that needs more time and a half or double time through the Center for Access and Success, there's also this test availability exceptions option where you can set specific students to have a different timer. And you can also make it so that students can take it at a different time. So if you have one student who has to take it at a different time, that is an option in here. Has the due date, and then also, like everything does, the due date. And then there's the options down here for sort of how the test runs, and these are really more the security options. So I mentioned you can set up a test, so after a certain date, students can see what you want, how they did on the test. There's a place, this is where you can set that. You can say after they submit the test, they can't see nothing, but then after a specific date, you could say maybe a week after the test is over, let them see what they got right or wrong, let them see what the correct answers were, but not before then. So it sort of helps with the security of your test. And then lastly down here, you can choose how the test is delivered. So that test that I showed you was a one at a time question delivery, but you can choose to do all at once instead, where it just shows all the questions at once on the page, and then everyone sort of scrolls down through the page instead of going through next as they take it. The most secure way to do a test for higher stakes stuff is to have one at a time and then check the box to also prohibit backtracking. So they see one question at a time, and then when they move to the next one, they can't go back to the other one. And then also enabling randomized questions so that everybody gets the questions in a different order. So if you can imagine, if you had a 50-question test, they only are allowed to see one question at a time. They have a somewhat narrow time to get the test done. It really makes it difficult to cheat. Certainly not impossible for the ingenious among us, but it's a lot more difficult if you set it up to sort of be as stringent as possible. And again, if you have any questions about how do you make your test as secure as possible that you're delivering through my courses, let us know and we'll try to go through the settings with you. All right, so this really picks up right up on what we were talking about in the first part of this workshop, which is grading an assignment submission from a student. So everything grade related is accessed in my courses under the Grade Center link in the lower half of the course menu. So the full Grade Center is where all the grades are stored and the columns are. This is sort of everything. Your roster shows up in here. Every grade you enter is recorded in here. But in the needs grading area, which is just above the full Grade Center link under the Grade Center, this is sort of like your inbox. So every time a student submits a discussion or an assignment, anything that's set up to be graded in my courses, it comes here for you to review. So here I can see I set up ahead of time, a student came in and submitted a paper for me to grade. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, I'm going to click on what this person submitted, and it's going to pull up what it is for me to read. So I mentioned in the first workshop, but if your student submitted something as a Word document or a PDF or a PowerPoint, it actually opens it right up in my courses so that you don't have to download it as an attachment, which is really nice, especially if you have bigger classes. You don't have to handle a million attachments floating around in your computer. So within here, I can read whatever the student has posted, and then along the top, I can use this little pencil button and this little speech bubble to sort of mark up the document as I'm reading it. So if I wanted to, draw, let's see, oh, that's so bad. This is an A+. So my sort of crude A+ there that I drew with my mouse, you could do that. But you could also underline words, scratch something out, and then you can use the little speech bubbles to drop comments throughout it. So good idea. Post that. You can add another one over here. Not so great. Post. And that's all, again, up here in the top right corner. I can either scribble with the pencil or drop little speech bubbles using the speech bubble button. And it really lets you mark up the student's paper without having to download it or use anything in Word. It's pretty great. And I'll show you on the student's end how it looks when they're reviewing what you've submitted to them as a graded document as well. Over on the right side is where you can put in the grade and type feedback to them. So there's there's always a box here to feedback to learner. And in this box, I can say, good work, next time, focus on ... You could type back. This is private feedback that only that student's going to be able to see. And then up in here, you could type in whatever you want the grade to be for them. So like 90 points, for example, you would type it in there. I'm also going to show what it looks like to grade with a rubric. If you don't know what a rubric is, it's basically sort of a pre-built set of criteria that you can evaluate students' work on. And if you've created a rubric in my courses, and again, we're not going to go over how to make one, but I'll mention how it works. And then if you want to make one, let us know and we'll help you. So in here, I can see that my rubric is attached to this assignment. And if I click here, it opens up the rubric for me to use to grade. So let me make this bigger. So this is just a sample rubric, but what you do is you click wherever they fall on this sort of criteria breakdown as you grade them. So if you say they did an above average job at organization, I can say they get 15 points for that, and I can say, whatever I want to here, and you just sort of click the different boxes to decide where the students fall. And how many points you want them to get for each individual criteria, wherever they fell on the sort of rubric spectrum here. And then my courses does the math and actually figures out whatever the grade would be based on where they fall in this rubric. You can provide feedback for each choice that you make. And all of this is automatically generated and delivered to the students when they're viewing their grade. So if I save this, it fills in the grade and it attaches my sort of completed rubric. And when I click submit here, it saves what I just did submits it, and then it goes off to the student now that they can look at it and say they can see what was graded and what was done. So on the student side of things, I'm going to go into Student View, and I'm going to click on the My Grades link on the course menu here. Most of you who have made courses in the last couple of weeks will have this My Grades link automatically in your courses. But if you don't, it's a tool link that you should definitely add and we can help you with, where this is basically students' space to go check what their grades are. So that paper that I just graded, submit your paper here. The student can see the grade that they got. They can click this little speech bubble to read my feedback, and then they can click View Rubric to see exactly how they were graded and where they fell and why I chose what criteria they met to what extent. So it's a really, for bigger projects and papers and things like that, if you already have rubrics in a Word document, it's pretty easy to transition them into this sort of my Blackboard, my courses version, but it's a really great way, and also a way that can speed up the grading if you just sort of have preset criteria to work with each time. And then on the student's end, it's almost a pre-built feedback that you wouldn't have to type for everyone, because the rubric sort of front loads that information for you to evaluate them against. All right, I'm going to back out of here. And I'm going to take a quick break. That is about all I'm going to talk about with my courses. It's just sort of a little bit deeper than last time, getting into some of the basic tools for having students to submit their work. Again, there's a ton more. I know that, but I don't want to overwhelm. We're only doing this for an hour. So I'm going to take a moment to look at the chat and take a sip of water. Oh, someone asked about students submitting assignments. When you create an assignment like this, the students just come in and click on the name of the assignment you set up, and they see this exact screen where they can come browse their computer and attach something as a submission to you. And like I mentioned, it's best for students to submit things as an Office file like Word or PowerPoint or a PDF, so that you can read it right in my courses instead of having to download it as an attachment. Okay. Someone asked about raw scores and letter grades. Yes, my courses can handle, can convert, or you can enter in letters instead of numbers, or numbers that will then compute to letters. That's all possible. Just let us know. We can follow up on that. Because it's just because it's different for everybody, how they want to grade and what their scale is. All right. So we're going to move on from my courses for now. I'm going to close this. And I guess we can enjoy this beautiful Sound of Music scape for a moment while I talk about Kaltura. So Kaltura is a tool that you can install on your computer that allows you to record sort of a lecture video that you can post for your students to watch online. There was a workshop on Kaltura this morning. I don't know if any of you were signed up for it, but it went a little south because Kaltura went down during that workshop. But I'm going to be able to demonstrate it here, hopefully. So here's what it looks like. I'm going to open it up. It's really easy to work with. It's only like 4 buttons. So let's see here. So the way it works is it just opens up. This is Kaltura, and it lets you pick what you want to record. So you can choose, most people will do, I want it to Kaltura to record my screen and then also what I'm saying. So it's going to come out, the video that's going to be recorded is of whatever was happening on your screen. So a lot of folks, that means they're going to have their PowerPoint open, talking over a PowerPoint or a document. And then whatever's being said, being picked up by their microphone. But it can also pick up your web camera. So here it shows a preview of my video. So if you just wanted to do a video talking to your class, you can turn on camera and then just talk straight to them instead of having your computer screen. Or you can have all 3 on, and then your computer screen's the focus, and then you're kind of like a little talking head in the corner. For my example, I'm just going to do a screen recording so that I can keep my camera on Kaltura. So here, I'm just going to hit the big red button to start recording, and it gives me a countdown. So, failed to start recording. Oh, fantastic. All right, let me try again. 3, 2, 1, eh? Oh, it's because my microphone. Yeah. So most of you won't be doing a live presentation while you're also recording in Kaltura. So I'm going to turn off my microphone so that I can record, if this works. Is it working? No, I can't do both of these at once. Okay, so just to give you an idea, this is how it will work. Let me open up a video. I'm going to give you a demonstration come hella high water. Okay, pay no attention to what's happening behind the curtain. I'm just opening up a video real quick. Okay, so I'm going to have to sort of show you what it looks like from a video. But once you have Kaltura installed, okay, so here's just what I was talking about earlier. Bump up the quality here. All right, so the way it works is you pick whatever you want to record, your screen, your audio, whatever it might be, and then when you hit record, it gives you this countdown, and then in the lower right corner of your screen, you have a little ticker that's telling you how much time how long you've been recording, and you'll also see a little pencil down there. And anytime you're recording your screen with Kaltura, you can actually click that little pencil and scribble on top of whatever's on your screen if you want to annotate. And then I believe it's going to get demonstrated. Here's what it looks like. And then you can also add little arrows on the screen to point at something if you're talking about it. You can add text on top. And then within here, once you're done, you click the stop button, which is again down in this little toolbar in the bottom right corner. And when you hit stop, it's going to say, yes, I'm sure I want to stop. It lets you play back what you just did, so you can listen to the recording you just made. And then finally, when you're ready to upload it, you can give it a name. So you can say my such and such lecture. And then you click save and upload. And what that does is it ships it up to My Courses. So to sort of show you what that looks like on the other end, once you've done your Kaltura recording, you know, Kaltura it almost feels like it's built right into My Courses because you download it from within My Courses, your videos are stored within My Courses, and when you want to post them back out to your students, it all happens sort of in the background in My Courses. So within here, I go to Build Content in a Content area, and then I go to Kaltura Media, and this is just going to bring you to a page that shows everything you've ever recorded in Kaltura. Recordings aren't automatically made available to your students. They sort of live in this private little space called My Media, where you can go pull them into your site as you want them. So for example here, this is, you know, just a test video that I did. So I can click select because this is the video I just recorded. I'm going to say pretend. I'm going to hit select. And then I can give this video some more information. So I'm going to say, you know, my lecture. Here it is. Submit. And that's going to embed it right on the page like a YouTube video would be. And so you and the students just come in, click play, and then you can watch it back. So it's nice that it's very self-contained. You never have to download the video. You're not moving files around. You just open up the Kaltura software, hit record, say your stuff, hit save. It goes up into My Courses, and then you go into your course site and pull it in through any content area under that build Kaltura Media option, so that it embeds in here like this for your students to watch. So that's Kaltura in a, you know, sort of at hyperspeed, so to speak. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how the tool works. So now I want to quickly sort of compare this to Zoom and why you'd use one versus the other, and sort of the pros and cons of one or the other, and how best to make use of both. I think the best approach, especially for classes that are more of a traditional lecture style, is to record your lectures using Kaltura. And you know, the stuff that you're just going to sort of talk straight to them and deliver information, record them with Kaltura, post them online for the students to watch on their own time, and then use Zoom meetings at your normal class times for check-ins with your students, Q&A to talk about what they watched in the videos, and you know, maybe quick review of how, you know, some major topics or questions that they might have. That's going to shorten your Zoom meetings, and that's okay. You don't, just because you met 3 hours a day, 3 hours a week in the physical classroom doesn't mean your Zoom meetings have to be 3 hours. You can have these videos paired with Zoom meetings and, you know, accomplish really the same thing, but it's more friendly in an asynchronous format. So and also it's a little more usable for the students. So over the past week, we have some lessons learned, especially about what students have access to in terms of technology and connection speeds. So the real benefit of this approach of sort of offloading your lecture as videos they watched before, and then using Zoom as more of an interactive session and the shorter sessions, is that this allows the students to watch them when they have time, not only when they have time, but on their own time, as many times as they need to, and at a time where they may have access to the best connection possible. It's okay if a video freezes for a moment and you wait for it to load, because it'll just keep playing. But as a student, when you're in a live Zoom meeting with your instructor and then it lags or you get kicked out, you've now missed a part of that synchronous meeting that was important. You come in 2 minutes later when you're able to get it back up and running, but you missed out on a piece of it that now could confuse you as you go on. So being able to deliver your lecture and your information in this mode with Kaltura allows that Zoom meeting to be used for the live sort of Q&A and review. And when you're doing that, you're less likely to use visuals because it's all mostly been delivered through the lecture. And the students are able to, in a Zoom meeting, call in instead of using their microphone, because when they're using, if they're having connection issues, which unfortunately a good amount of our students have had, are enough to have the word come down that I need to talk about it in this workshop, let's put it that way. They can call in and still hear what's going on in the Zoom session. If their connection's not good, it's just straight telephone option for Zoom, where students can call in if their microphone's bad or they don't have one. So they can still listen to what's going on in a review session. And if it's shorter, it makes it more feasible to be more fully participated and less likely that technology can get in their way. So, the Zoom sort of live meeting, sort of letting go of that being the only method, that synchronous method of teaching, and letting it be offloaded here for students to watch, and then using Zoom as a sort of way to check in with the students, do reviews, makes it sort of technologically less stressful for the students all around. We found that tends to be the best approach. So some of you might think, well, my Zoom meetings are recorded. So if a student does have connection issues during the live meeting where I am lecturing, they can always watch the recording. And that is true, but the Kaltura videos are a bit easier for the students to stream, just because it's designed to be watched sort of individually, because you've recorded it one-to-one. It's not you're not pausing to take questions or anything like that. They're just sort of taking the information straight ahead. So that's sort of the approach that we're starting to recommend to folks, just because for student connectivity, I think it also is for your own sanity. You don't have to sit in front of the camera for 3 hours now. You can do a Kaltura recording of what you want to talk about the week before, prep it, put it online for them, and then meet with them online in a shorter amount of time, just to sort of engage them, check in with them, make sure they're comfortable with what they're doing, and sort of move on from there. A lot of folks also wanted to know about where recordings go for Zoom meetings, like the one we're in now. And so in my courses, when you're in a Zoom live classroom, I'm going to switch over somewhere in here. So Zooms for your whole class are in one particular area, but when you come into Zoom, you and the students will see them under this Cloud Recordings tab. So you have upcoming meetings, which lists every meeting that you've scheduled to happen coming up. But the Cloud Recordings is, if you've had any of those sessions recorded, they all just get filed into here. It's just a little bit of a different tab. You'll both see it under the Cloud Recordings area, and then students will also see it under previous meetings, like this. Just like this. So when they go to previous meetings, they'll see, here's the meeting from Monday, and then there's a link there to recording details. So in the My Courses, you'll see it under Cloud Recordings, they'll see it under previous meetings. So that's how they're all accessible. Takes about time and a half for Zoom recordings to open, to be processed. So if you do a session at like 9 in the morning and it was an hour and a half long, you may not see it until 2 hours later or later that afternoon, especially because a lot of people are recording stuff right now. So what's next? Okay. So I also want to talk about some other tips for using Zoom. Again, I've sort of talked about using Zoom and the basics and scheduling meetings in our first workshop, but some things that have come up are, how do I have someone else in the Zoom room with me? Sorry, the chat just caught my attention. Andrew, please show the faculty what to do to prevent students from watching Zoom recordings. Yes, so if you do want to, well, first of all, recording a Zoom session is optional. So if you don't want students to, if you want to have a Zoom meeting with your students and then not have them be able to watch it later, you could just choose not to record it. It's totally up to you. But if you did record it and then you say, oh, I don't want them to see that, you can just go into your class, click on Zoom Live Meetings, and then under the Cloud Recordings tab, you can delete any of the recordings that are there. It's totally in your control. So if you click, if, for example, if I deleted this, which I don't want to, it would take it off the page for me, it would take it off the page for students, poof, it's gone. So you can always delete something from them. So now I'm going to jump back and talk a little bit more about some good practices for Zoom. So first is how to use it for office hours and also for advisement. I'll mention in here, we have a whole page with support information on Zoom. And again, I'll send out a link to this page, but from here you can log into your Zoom account under UMass Dartmouth. And when you set up meetings, everybody has a personal meeting room. And this is sort of a consistent session that is always attached to your account, automatically generated, and can just be sort of sent to someone as a link to join you anytime without sort of scheduling something specific at a specific time. So under this personal meeting room, you can choose to turn on what's called the waiting room. So I'm going to edit the meeting, and I'm going to turn on enable waiting room. And when I do that, it's going to make it work this way, where when the students come in, they're not automatically going to be brought into your room with you. So you'd send out, say you have office hours, right? And you put this link in all of your My Courses sites. And so everybody in all of, for your 5 sections comes into this one central room instead of having 5 different rooms to go to. It's very handy, right? But you don't want everybody to sort of pile in at the same time because you might want to work with one student one-on-one, finish talking to them, move on to the next person. Enabling the waiting room makes it so that before a student joins your room, they get a screen like this on their end. And it's going to tell them, please wait, the meeting's in, host will let you in soon. And on your end, it looks like this. If you're already in the meeting, as I am now, it's going to pop up and say student, whoever's name, has entered the waiting room for this meeting. And when you're ready to let that person in, you can click admit, and then it lets them into the room with you. So for example, if I was in here with a student and we were talking about their paper, I was sharing my screen, talking over the paper with them, someone can't just barge in and show up. I have my waiting room on so that I can choose, okay, I'm gonna finish with this student, then admit them in so that they can come in when I'm not in the middle of something with someone else. It's kind of like, wait outside the door. It's a virtual version of that. So that's the waiting room. And it works well for office hours and for advisement. You just use that one consistent person. It's called the personal meeting ID. You send them the link to that. And again, we have a video on how to sort of set this stuff up. And of course, I will follow up on it. But just sort of keep in your mind, personal meeting ID and waiting rooms is a great way for online office hours and for advisement. Okay, what else do I want to talk about? Let me check the chat here real quick, see what people have been asking about. Yeah, Zoom works inside My Courses as well as outside. So we've been recommending if you're going to have a meeting with your whole entire class, make the meeting in My Courses through this little Zoom Live Classroom link. If you want to meet with your colleagues, your department, your student one-on-one, whatever it might be, you would use what's called your Zoom personal meeting ID. Once you've got Zoom on your computer, once you've done one Zoom session, it's installed on your computer, I'm going to bring it in. I haven't tested this. Can everyone see my Zoom? Hold on, let me close this. Does everybody see Zoom on my screen right now? It's like a window with like my personal meeting ID. Let me know. Can you see this? I hope so. Yes, no? Is anybody out there? No. All right, hold on.
Andrew, I can only see your desktop. It's
okay. All right, just a moment, please.
Oh, now we can see the.
Can you see it now, my Zoom?
Yes. Well, okay. We see like your snip and scratch.
Okay. Yeah. So I just had to take a screenshot of something because Zoom's sort of like a little too smart for its own good sometimes, where like Zoom won't show while I'm sharing my Zoom buttons. So like it doesn't let you see behind the curtain, but then that sort of works against me trying to train you how to use Zoom on Zoom. It's a little bit of Zoomception. At least one meeting, you can open it up and you can see You can schedule meetings outside of my courses with other people, and you'll always have this My Personal Meeting ID. And in here, you can copy a link to your personal meeting ID and send that to anyone. And that's the room that we recommend sharing with the students for online office hours. And because it's just one link, it's never going to change. If you schedule new meetings have new links every time. So you'd have to remember to come in, send one person the right link for every single meeting. This is just going to allow you to use the same meeting for every person, so that they can't get backed up in there and only one person comes in at a time. But for your own sanity, it's just one link to manage instead of a link for every single meeting you have outside of my courses. So my courses, schedule your class-wide meetings. Zoom, use your personal meeting ID for advisement and online office hours. That's the flow. All right, so that was about all I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions or you want me to click a little deeper in something, feel free to type it into the chat. Personal meeting ID does not change for different meetings. This is the only room where that's true. So for example, here you can see under today, I have my instructional continuity workshop for today. I have another one set up for Wednesday. Every time you schedule a new meeting, it's a different link, and a different link you have to send to people. My personal meeting ID has a consistent link. It's the same link all the time. So I send you a link to it to meet with you today, and then if you want to meet with me again tomorrow, you send the same thing. Kaltura, how to access Kaltura. So Kaltura, it's a few clicks to get Kaltura installed. But if you log into my courses, and Rachel sent the tutorial before in the chat on how to do this, but when you first log into my courses, it's sort of been hiding in plain sight. If you scroll down at the bottom of the center column of stuff, there's a Kaltura Video My Media link. And when you click into there, this is where you would download Kaltura from. So on this page in the upper right-hand corner, once it loads in, there's Add New, Kaltura Capture. So you go into that My Media, Kaltura Capture, and this will let you download the software. Like I said, I'll follow up with a tutorial on how to do this with all the detail that you'll need to do it yourself. And then we're happy to set it up to follow up with anybody if you have questions or you want to meet with us one-on-one. My goal here is really more to show you what it's capable of than to click through every single thing you'll need to know, because everybody needs to know something different and everybody prioritizes something different with capturing lecture, because everybody lectures and covers such different stuff. So if a student wants to meet with me today and tomorrow, yes, just like Rachel said, students also have access to Zoom, but students are limited to 40-minute meetings. That's the only difference. You can have unlimited length meetings. So if student groups want to meet on their own, they can do that. You don't have to worry about setting that up. They can use their own Zoom stuff. But on your end, if you schedule a meeting with a student, you can just send them a link and say, here's where, or I'll tell you what I do with faculty. So I have a meeting today at 3:30 with somebody. So I said, great, talk to you at 3:30. And then I send them a link to my personal meeting ID. And that's what they'll meet with. They'll click that and they'll join my meeting with me. But on the other side of it, if I met with them again 2 weeks from now, I would send them that same exact link. Just because that meeting is always sitting there and it always is attached to me. And within my Zoom software, I can always join that personal meeting ID and start that meeting. And whoever I'm trying to meet with will just be in there because they follow that same route. It's sort of like saying, this is my office. You may teach in a different classroom for every different class, but your office doesn't necessarily move. So that's your personal meeting ID. Yeah, the link never changes. I want to stress it does not change. The link is always the same for the personal meeting ID. Not true of any other meeting you choose to schedule. All right. So if there's any other questions, feel free to type them in. Otherwise, I don't think there are. So yeah, that's it for today. Like I said, I'll follow up with an email after this workshop, probably a little later this afternoon. I'll put all that together with follow-up. If you have any questions along the way, I should make sure I mention how to reach out to us. I think at this point, most of you know how to find us. Our inboxes definitely indicate that you do. But if you log into my courses, when you first log into my courses, along the right side, there's a big blue button to contact support, and that gets you to us. It'll take you to a page where you can, nope, not that one, this one, where you can put in a ticket, or a case, I should say, to Instructional Technologies, and that routes it to our team. So if you have any questions about Zoom, my courses, Kaltura, you come to this IT help form, ithelp.umassd.edu, and click on Instructional Technologies to reach out to us. But really, this is the portal to get to anything. If you need help with any technology at UMass, this is really how to get to us. So again, you just log into my courses and click Contact Support over on the right. All right. So thank you so much. Like I said, you'll hear from me a little later today with an email. I hope everybody stays safe and has a great week. All right. Bye, everybody.